All right, well, let's get started. So this is the ReSharper presentation, and my name is Lee Richardson, and you can find out more about me on Twitter at lpritchar. I blog at leerichardson.com, and I've been a software developer and consultant in the DC area for almost 20 years now. And I also blog at my company, InfernoRed.com, and they are also a sponsor here today. There was the booth out there, and we had a couple other presenters, including Roberto and Matt in the back doing the HoloLens. And they're a great company because they do 100% work from home. They're a small company. They do all commercial work, and they send us to build every single year. And it's just a really great group of people, always looking for great talent. Other sponsors include AIS, Excella, InScope, Syncfusion, Microsoft, JetBrains. Thanks to Microsoft for giving us the space today and not charging us. You may recognize me as the Siren of Shame guy, or maybe you don't. If you don't, it's a siren that you can buy on the website. This is just a hobby project of mine, but you hook it up to your continuous integration server, monitors the CI server, and whenever the CI server breaks, the lights go around and it goes, wah, wah, wah. So that's kind of fun. It's a fun hobby project. You may also recognize me as doing the Windows IoT talk I did at the last Code Camp and user groups. But today, we are here for ReSharper, which is this awesome productivity tool from JetBrains. Who here has used ReSharper in the past? Who here has never used ReSharper? Okay, well, we got a good mix, I guess 50-50. This presentation is going to be interesting. I'm going to go through very fast. There's going to be a lot of code. I'm kind of assuming that you've seen a lot of these keyboard shortcuts already. So you may get something out of this if you've already got a lot of ReSharper experience, and you'll probably get something out of it if you haven't. Let me know after this how it ended up going, whether it's worth doing this kind of presentation again. It's kind of interesting. Okay, so this is going to be, I'm going to make this kind of interesting. We've got a bingo game we're going to do at the same time as the presentation. So everyone should pick up a bingo card, if you don't mind just passing those along. And so I'm going to trying to keep this interesting by having a set of, we're going to have a sort of sticks and carrots to keep everyone awake and alert and learning. And the carrots work like this. If you get, everyone knows how bingo works, right? You get 5 in a row. If you get 5 in a row horizontally, or you get 5 in a row vertically, or you get 5 in a row diagonally, which can only happen 2 ways, then you win a prize. So that's the carrots part of this presentation. The sticks part of the presentation works like this. If you fall asleep, I'm going to take one of these prizes and I'm going to wing it at you, which could work out really well, or it could end up in a lawsuit. We'll see how it goes. I know you guys are going to be like, the guy's asleep the guy next to you is falling asleep, and you're not going to wake him up, are you? It's going to be too entertaining. Okay, I should warn you that ReSharper is not a free tool. It is a wonderful tool, but it does cost money. Hopefully you can get your company to pay for it. InfernoRed paid for my license, and I've gotten most prior companies to pay for it. But I would say it's worth every penny. The benefits come in 3 main areas. There's refactoring, which is, who here knows what refactoring is? Can someone tell me real quick? 10 words or less, yes?
Refactoring that you change something, whichever class affected, rename or something.
Yeah, a rename is a very good example. It's something which is changing your code, but not adding any functionality. And this was originally brought up by Martin Fowler in his classic 1999 book, where the title of the book was Refactoring. And he basically had this idea that you could take code and you would change the code without adding functionality. And at the time it was like this crazy idea. Why would you change code without adding new functionality? And his idea was, well, you're trying to change it for the purpose of maintainability, readability, and maybe performance. And so it's this special type of class of changing code. And he wrote a whole book with a whole bunch of manual steps on how to do things like renaming. But what's great about ReSharper is it does a lot of these refactorings for you automatically. They're not manual steps. Instead, it does them for you automatically, and it uses the type system built into C# to make it that much faster. And you can have 100%, nearly 100% confidence that these changes to your code are going to not necessarily improve readability, but they may, hopefully they do, but without impacting the way that the code works. So that's really, that's what refactoring is all about. Is an example of a rename, like the example you just gave. The next big area that it gives you is the ability to navigate through code really easily. Control-T is the best example of this, but, and I'll get to that in just a second. Sure, okay, yeah, sure. You can mark that off on your bingo cards if you want. There's a Control-T for you. That allows you to navigate to files. I'll show it in more detail in a second. But the ability to navigate through class hierarchies, up and down inheritance structures and chains, and through interfaces is just a phenomenal feature. And the third major area that ReSharper gets you is static analysis. This is something that doesn't come out of the box in Visual Studio. It's kind of like FXCop. You guys know, everyone knows FXCop? Yeah. So it's basically scanning through, looking for code smells. But what ReSharper does is not only does it find a huge number of code smells in your code, but it allows you to automatically fix them. So it's finding these as you're typing. Immediately, as soon as you write a smell or come across one in legacy code, it'll show it to you right then and there, and it'll give you the ability to fix it. So this is a good example. This is like 2 methods here. Let's see, there should be a pointer. There's 2 methods here, some numbers, and the first one is an overload that just passes in the constant variable 10. And so ReSharper immediately spots that and is like, it looks like you're trying to do something else. What if you were to introduce an optional parameter? And so instead of, you can knock out these whole 4 lines of code with just saying int count equals 10 and putting in that default value there, right? It makes your code much tighter and more readable, and you can just hit the keyboard shortcut to introduce the optional parameters, and it fixes it for you. So really nice feature. So so we need some code. This is all going to be, this demonstration is going to be all code from here on out pretty much. And so hopefully you guys are all comfortable with looking at a lot of code. Yeah, if not, now's a great time to leave. Matt, I know this is going to be too difficult for you. No, just teasing. I work with Matt. Yeah, okay. So now we've gotten rid of the riffraff. I needed something to give sort of a code base, and a couple of years ago I was working with a team of junior developers, and I needed to get them up to speed on C# really quickly. So I put together these code katas. They're sort of like mental exercises to get people up to learning some of the more advanced features of C#, not just learning C# as it is Java, not just like learning Java like C#, but actually learning the expression trees and some of the more advanced features. And so this is where we're going to start, and I'll show a couple katas. And it's sort of roughly based on the red-green refactor. I hand off a whole bunch of red failing unit tests, and I ask the people who are going through the kata to turn the failing unit tests green, and then I have a bunch of to-dos in there, and the to-dos say, okay, now that you've got it green, refactor it to keep it green, but make it even cleaner and better code and more idiomatic to the C# language. So that's the plan, and I'm going to try to present this all just from a keyboard. I didn't actually try this before now, so it'll be interesting to see if it works. Because standing at this podium and typing is kind of hard. Yeah. Okay, let's pretend you just opened up a solution out of the blue and you need to get into some code. So the first thing that you're going to do normally is go over to the Solution Explorer. But let's say you know a little bit about your code already, and you know, for example, that you want to get into Kata 1 basic link. And so you would normally double-click over there, but wouldn't it be nice if you could just do a Control-T, in case you hadn't already gotten that on your bingo card, and type in KO1. And I should probably zoom in a bit on that. So you typed in Control-T, KO1, and or maybe you just know that it was basic link, so you could type BL, and oh, look, there's basic link. Or maybe you remembered that it had the word basic in it. It's this sort of smart search where it kind of figures out what it is you're trying to do. But it's more than just file names. Inside of this file, there's a class called calculator. Well, let's say I remember that there was a calculator. Boom, I can go right to the calculator one. This is actually a Visual Basic one. For some reason, I put together a Visual Basic for these people. So yeah, there's calculator. I could do CAL, and it recognizes that. Or I could even go to the method name, SumNumbers, SN, and it knows that I want to go to SumNumbers in basic link. So that's kind of nice. All right. What's that?
Do the same with JavaScript?
Yes, you can. It's not quite as good in JavaScript because it doesn't have the static analysis. But ReSharper actually gives you, and I'm not even going to go over it today, but it gives you a whole bunch of really nice refactorings in JavaScript as well. It even has pretty good support for Angular and for React. So, OK. And oh, hey, do you guys have pens? Do you need pens? Yeah, because what true developer really has pens? You can hand these out. So the next keyboard shortcut, well, second keyboard shortcut I want to show you is to run all unit tests, and that's Control-UL. And Control-UL is running all my tests, and it's finding some do stuff, but it didn't actually run anything because we have an ignore attribute here. So what we need to do is follow the first to do in here. And actually, to make it a little bit easier on you guys, I will keep track of my keyboard shortcuts. So we've done Control-T. We've done Control-UL, which is run all tests. And the next one I want to show you is to remove the ignore attribute. You can do Shift-Delete. And I love that. It just deletes a line, makes life really easy. And so that is Shift-Delete. And now you can see that all of the tests are passing, are failing. If I did Control-UL again, Control-UL again, you'll see that all of these guys inside of test here, we've got 2 passing, we've got several failing, and this is one of the benefits of ReSharper right here is that it has a test runner built in. So that's kind of nice, and you can see over here that I can run all of these tests. And if I wanted to just run the last set of tests that I ran, so not everything in the solution, which might take a little while, but just the last set, then you can do Control-UU. And that's going to just run the last set that you ran. But there's something even slightly better than that, which is there's a continuous test runner built in, which will just continually run your tests. This is part of ReSharper Ultimate, so that was the question about version specific. It's a pretty nice feature. You go under Tests and Continuous Testing Session, and that takes us to down here. And you'll see that it says on save, build, and run dirty tests. So that is what you want to do. And if I'm taking a look under test, and let's say I do something which definitely makes it fail, like return 2, for example, and I hit save, it's rerunning all those tests. And it's just doing that every time you save, and that's kind of a nice feature. It's just constantly working in the background. It is not, however, nearly as good as NCrunch. Do you guys who here knows NCrunch? Oh, wow! You guys are in for a treat. It is another tool that costs money, but it's actually running here right now. As you can see, this right here. No. NCrunch is a completely separate tool from a completely separate company that also costs money, and it just continually runs your tests in the background. But what's amazing about it is it runs them so insanely fast that it's like, I don't even know, it's like it's reading your mind before you type and then determines whether what you're about to type is going to fail the tests or not. Something along those lines. And so it has a bunch of built-in. I'm going to run it because it looks good in a demo because it's faster. But you can see we got both going on here. We got the ReSharper tests going on, and we got NCrunch has turned all of these red, and that's that part there just to keep you all alert. You can see these tests are passing, these tests are passing, and it's showing you which lines of code are getting covered too. So if I said like if start is equal to 100, do return 5 or 54. Oh, start was equal to 100. How about if it's equal to 200? Okay, there. Those turned white because those lines of code don't have any tests that cover those lines of code. But I'm not here to tell you about NCrunch. I'm here to tell you about ReSharper. But I get excited. I get excited about this kind of stuff. Okay, so we did delete all, we did run all unit tests, we talked about continuous test session. Here's a nice little one. Wouldn't it be nice if, well, first of all, this is a terrible name. This should be called like calculator test, right? Calculator test. That's good enough. If you go right over to something like this and you do Alt-Enter, and man, I wish, can you see that well enough? Yeah? Okay, good. In the back of the room? Good. So in here there is a move to calculatortest.cs. Normally, if you have multiple classes in a file, listen to your quick and dirty coding session, and you end up putting a whole bunch of classes, and you know, C# lets you do that, unlike Java where you have to have one class per file. But it is a little bit tidier and I suppose a little more professional to put one class per file in C#. And so you can do that with one keystroke pretty much. And now we have a new file called calculator test right over here. So that's a very nice little feature there. That is, I guess that's just one of the alt enters. I guess on your bingo cards here, there's probably, oh, it's not a bingo card, but if you, there's a whole bunch of alt enters. This just, you know, don't mark them all off. What's that? I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Yeah, any 5 horizontal, any 5 vertical, any 5 diagonal. All right, so we talked about move to another file. Rename, we kind of talked about that a little bit. Well, how about let's try to do this. So we want to refactor this so that there are no loops or idiomatic. Let's just try to solve this problem. So this is saying if I start at 100 and sum the next 1, then the total should be 100. So basically this test is saying if I start at 100, take the next 1 number, which I guess is 100 in this case. It's a little weird. Then the result is 100. Or in this case, if I take the number 100 and take the next 2 numbers, which would be 100 and 101, and I sum those together, then the result is 201. So if I were to do something like that in code, and this is just going to be easier if I sit down, I think. Let's try this. First of all, if I type 4, ReSharper has immediately tried to detect that I am typing in a 4, and this is a template. So ReSharper installs a whole bunch of templates, and if I hit tab now, it allows me to sort of tab through the main elements of a for loop, and so that's kind of nice. So yeah, for I equals 0, I is less than count, I suppose, something like that. And then we want to var result equal to, well, let's set it to 0 perhaps. And result plus equals start plus I. Does that sound about right? Oh, everything turned green. That's exciting. Okay, so everything turned green, but notice on the upper right up here that there is there's a diamond. Wait a minute, it's not a diamond. A warning. Yeah, I need my 6-year-old daughter to help me out with shapes here, I think. That is it's a warning that's in the shape of a triangle. And that triangle says that there's a warning in the file, and that's because code is unreachable. It found this unreachable code down here. And it's nice that it found it. I mean, that would have been a compiler warning. I would have eventually found it anyway, but I found it as I was typing. And I can't tell you the number of times that unreachable code or an unused variable has, you know, I was just about to hit F5 and wait for 5 minutes while Visual Studio compiled and deployed, when actually this was a hint at something else, that I'd messed up something else somewhere in the code. And so this little trick has saved me so many times. But if I hit Alt-Enter now, it gives me the quick fix for this is to remove the unreachable code. Boom. And you'll see that this has now turned back to, wait for it, turned back to green.
Is that a ReSharper thing or is that nCrunch?
That is ReSharper. Everything is ReSharper. Yeah, thanks for clarifying. The only thing that's nCrunch is these things right here. And I'll try not to proselytize nCrunch anymore. Okay. So we talked about move to another file. Now, this isn't very accurate. We're not really summing numbers. We're kind of like summing the next. So if I do Control-RR, I can say this is really like sum next, something like that. And that was just so quick and easy. And if I go back to my unit tests, you'll see that these are all doing sum next. And everything just continues to pass. So that was a nice little trick there. So that's Control R, R. All right, we got the rename. How about, yeah, go ahead. Oh, it's the Visual Studio shortcut. I think you can do like an IntelliJ keyboard shortcuts. That's a good question, thank you. If you are a Java person and you come from IntelliJ world, then you could do that as well. I'm assuming everyone comes from a Visual Studio world for this example, and so I'm assuming that set of keyboard shortcuts. It's actually a lot harder if you go to IntelliJ from Visual Studio. It's a lot harder to get the ReSharper keyboard shortcuts. You have to, it takes a while. You have to find it. It's well hidden. So navigate to, so normally, let's say we were over here in our unit tests and you wanted to go into sum next. What's the keyboard shortcut to go into sum next from Visual Studio? F12, yeah. This is not a ReSharper thing. I can go F12, but one thing that ReSharper adds is the ability to hold down the Control key and hyperlink into it. So I just hyperlinked into that, and that's kind of nice if you happen to have your hand on the mouse. I don't know why you would do that, but it's possible. In addition to navigate to, you can also go back from and find all usages. I think this is also in Visual Studio, but if I do it here, I can zoom down all of these, and it's just a little bit tidier and faster with the ReSharper. They overrode the way that that works. And better yet, if there's only one usage of something, it'll go directly to it rather than saying, do you want to go to the thing that you just came from, which ReSharper does, or which Visual Studio does. It always kind of annoyed me. So it just little cleanups there, here and there. So that was F12 and Shift F12. Can you? How do you do it? Oh, the back button?
Back button on the mouse and it goes back from your control click.
Yeah, that's good too. And you can also do Control minus. So if you end up, if you end up going in here on sum next and you do Control minus, that's the same thing as the back button, and that's the same thing as that up there. So that is actually, I think that might be on your bingo cards. So that is Control minus. All right. By the way, while you're in here, if you wanted to sort of skim down all of the methods in here, you can Alt down, and that allows you to just sort of zip down through all the methods in a file. So that's Alt, up, down. Nice little trick there. Let's say you want to fix this for real. So step number 2 was to refactor this so there's no loops or if statements, which is more idiomatic. I mean, C# is moving towards a more functional style with LINQ, and so I think the more idiomatic approach for something like this would probably be to return enumerable. Anyone actually shout it out? Can anyone tell me off the top of their heads? There's a really tight way to solve this. Yeah, a dot sum is important. How about enumerable dot range? So you can say from, what do we want, 1, I think? No, from start to, with count, dot sum, and I think we can return that just like that, and bingo, green. Okay, no, I didn't get bingo, but, and again, this is ReSharper saying, hey, would you like to remove this unreachable code now? Yeah, how nice is that? I think this is actually built into Visual Studio, but I just have to mention it because I'm still always a little bit surprised that people don't know the keyboard shortcut to comment out and uncomment out. Anyone want to help me out? Yeah, nice. Control K C, and to undo it? Control K U, yeah. So I had to throw that in there. Okay. I think we've covered everything in Kata 1. That was a fairly straightforward one. Let's go to Kata 3. Who has heard of FizzBuzz? Yeah, 1, 2, 3. FizzBuzz was this idea that was proposed by Joel Joel Spolsky? Is it Joel Spolsky? Yeah. That he wanted to be able to do interviews, and he always was getting frustrated because he was getting a lot of candidates that were coming in, and he felt like they didn't actually understand the basics of software development. And he would spend, an hour in an interview only to realize that they were struggling with basic concepts. And he wanted a sort of a litmus test to help verify that the candidates knew sort of basic stuff about coding. And so the idea was that they should write a simple program that would count from like 1 to 100, and if the number is divisible by 3, then write the word fizz, and if the number is divisible by 5, then write the word buzz, and if the number is divisible by 3 and 5, then write the word fizzbuzz. And apparently this is based on like a childhood game where kids will play this in the schoolyard. I would have failed miserably because math is totally not my strong suit, but apparently kids will do like 1, 2, fizz. See, I'm already messing it up. 1, 2, fizz, 4, buzz, 5, I don't know. Anyway. There you go. Fortunately, there's unit tests, which I wrote to do this. So basically, they're saying the same thing. In this case, oops, this is down here. There we go. Let's start seeing if they pass. They fail. So in this case, 3 should return fizz, and 5 should return buzz, and 15 should return fizzbuzz, and 2 should return the number 2, and then there's one we'll get to a little bit later, which is doing all of them. 1, 2, fizz, 4, fizz, buzz, fizz, 7, 8, fizz, and then eventually it gets up to 15, which is fizzbuzz. Okay, ready to take a stab at this? How about if, no, I'm going to try sitting down again, see if I can type a little faster. If I mod 3 is equal to 0, then return fizz. If I mod 5 is equal to 0, then return buzz. And if I divided by 3 is equal to 0. Did I mess something up? And I mod 5 is equal to 0, then return fizz buzz else. We're going to return like I dot toString maybe. Having it compile is good. Go ahead. Yeah, great catch. Yes, that's exactly what you should do. And there's a really nice keyboard shortcut to make that easier. So yeah, for those of you that missed it, there is a failing unit test down here, which is, in the case of 15, it's divisible by 3 and 5, right? So when we call map number, there's a bug here that says if it's divisible by 3, then return the word fizz. Well, we're returning too early. We should have made it down to this line here. And so we could fix this. By the way, this is just a really quick way to fix it. There's lots of ways to solve this problem. But what you could do now is you could select this, and you could do Shift, Control, Shift, Alt. I know it's so many keys, but Control, Shift, Alt. It selects it all, and now you can just move that set of lines up to here, and everything passes. Cool. So that's kind of a nice little trick. It works for methods too. Like if I wanted to have this method right here, and I'd really kind of prefer it to be down here, then I can move it down there, and that's kind of nice. So that's the most complicated one that they have. Control, Shift, Alt, up, down. Okay, how about extracting variables? Does this look a little obtuse to you guys? I mean, would you look at this? Someone else wrote it. Let's say you didn't write it. Someone else wrote it, and you looked at this. Wouldn't you just kind of, I don't know, feel like it was kind of hard to read? I would. So in this case, I might take something like this, and it would be nice if this was actually a variable name instead. So I can do Control-RV to extract this into a variable. And what ReSharper has done is it's scanned the rest of the file and seen if there's anything similar in the code. And so while it found this, it also found this down here. And it was like, hey, would you like me to extract both of those while I'm at it? You got it? Got a bingo?
Is the middle one?
The middle one's free.
Okay.
Cool. Which prize would you like? Would you like a? Yep, nice. There are 2 prizes. There is a siren of shame, and there's a mug. Will you actually, you have to promise, because these things do cost some money to make. If you take the siren of shame, will you actually use it? This is the siren of shame. So you hook this up to your continuous integration server, and when the build breaks, the lights spin around and it goes, wah, wah, wah. Or a mug.
Okay, I can take.
All right. It's good fun, yeah. I mean, you have to have a sense of humor. If you're working with a bunch of people that don't have a sense of humor, then people might take offense, and it's not going to work quite as well, but I don't know. I think it's fun. Go ahead and keep playing. We'll take the next couple people that win, I guess. Okay, so we can extract these two instances, and we can say is divisible by 3, and in this case, we can say extract that to a variable, control RV is divisible by 5, and I don't know about you guys, but I find that considerably, if I were to discover that in someone else's code, I would be a lot happier because I wouldn't have to think as much. It reads like a sentence, and I like code that reads like a sentence if I can get away with it. And that was control R V. Okay, so talk about moving blocks of code, extracting variable. I don't know if I showed you this, but there is a way to, well, we'll get to this in just a second. Okay, there's one more test which is failing down here, and that is the one which is trying to do all of the numbers up to 100. And there's actually a really nice way to solve this problem, which is we're taking n, so we want enumerable.range, and we're trying to go from, what, 1 was it? I think it starts at 1, up to n. And we just want to select it from a number into a, what is this thing up here called? Map number. Into I, map number of I, and there we go. Hopefully that, oh, I better return. How's that? Yay, it turned green. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, there is something on the right. It's not a warning. This is a hint. And the hint is that you can convert this to a method group. So one of the things ReSharper has is it has a whole range of different types of static analysis kind of warnings. There's errors, which are compiler errors. There's warnings, which will turn the thing in the upper right-hand side, it'll turn it yellow. And then there's hints and something else. And this is level below a warning. But you can change all of that if you want to. So I could hit Alt-Enter on here and say, oops, I have to go over to where it's actually occurring. And inspection options, and I can say I would like to configure the inspection severity. I would like to change this from a suggestion to a warning. So this is going to turn, and you'll notice up here that we now have this turn to a warning. So here's something that's really cool that you can do with this. You can save it just for yourself, but if your whole team is using ReSharper everywhere, you can essentially use these static analysis tools as a way of getting your entire team to come together towards a set of conventions. And so you can save these types of settings back into Subversion. Who uses Subversion? Back into Git or your repository or wherever your code sharing is. And so when you say, I would like this to go into a suggestion, oops, when you say, I would like this to go into a, you know what, I'm going to show you that in just a little bit. I'll show you that later. But for now, so the option is to replace with a method group. Who knows what a method group is? This was me. This was me before I started using ReSharper. I guess I knew that you could do this kind of thing, but I have learned so much about the language because of the static analysis rules. And so when I Alt-Enter on here and say convert to method group, I actually didn't need all that extra sort of fluff. I can just type in, I can just pass in the method itself because there's only one argument. It knows that this syntax is the same thing. And so ReSharper also helps teach you about the language. It's a very nice feature. By the way, in order to get through the things in the code, you can do Alt, page down, and it'll allow you to zip through all of the kind of warnings and hints in the file. This one down here, it noticed that actual is we called .toList on it. And toList, you don't need to use the link extension method. You can just use the, what's that? Oh, excellent. Here you go, sir. Here is a mug for you. I'm sorry?
I just came in.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, it's there's a bingo game. I'm sorry. Yeah. So if I Alt home, then I can. Sorry, that was Alt up and Alt down, and that's often some of the Alt page down. That's one of the first things I do when I open up a new file. I usually just skim through all of the warnings in there. So that is Alt page up, down. Okay. Hopefully everyone's going to have been finished this by the time we get to the next kata, because it's going to get a little harder. We're going to do some more interesting stuff. So we talked about next warning. Okay, yeah. Okay, the last kata that we're going to try to attempt to do, how are we doing on time here? Oh, we're in good shape, excellent, is kata 9. And this is, I wanted to teach the idea of dependency injection. Can anyone sort of quickly describe either inversion of control or dependency injection? Yeah.
It's where you separate out your concerns. So you basically take a class and you extract an interface for it. And that interface, you can make multiple classes for it. And you can basically tell the code, if certain conditions are met, take this particular class and inject it into. You're basically composing a class instead of encapsulating things.
That's like a textbook answer. Very nicely done. Yeah, that's exactly. And so that's what we're going to try to do here. What I've basically given is a dirty class that mixes concerns, and I'm asking the people who are doing this, and this is actually one of the few where the unit tests are passing to begin with. So step 1 is to remove the ignore attribute, so I'll do that. And what we've got over here is a log parser. There's a log parser and there's logs. A log is basically just a date when something occurred. Maybe someone logged into a website or something like that, and a message like login failed or whatever. And this log parser is going to skim over some logs based on something that was passed into it, which log to read, I guess a project name or something. And it reads all of the lines in there actually reading it off the file system, and then it skims through and gets them within a certain range and returns their message. And so the to-dos here say, start to clean up this disaster. Well, disaster is a bit of a strong word, because I mean, it doesn't look too bad, right? This is like 7 lines of code. 7 lines of code can't be that much of a disaster. But maybe someone can tell me what's bad about this. Is there something bad about this code that jumps out at you immediately? There is a return in the middle, which, I mean, sometimes some people believe in early return. If it's a short method, sometimes early return is okay. Anything else? What's that? Hard coding file names. Yeah, that could be bad. That could be bad. There is no try catch. Okay, you guys are coming up with all kinds of good things. There's something as it relates to inversion of control. It is very hard to write unit tests for this, yeah, because it's reading from the file system. So the only way that these unit tests could have occurred was because they first write to the file system, and they're writing to ctemp. And if I go over to ctemp right now, you're going to see that there's these two CVS, comma separated value files. That was the only way to get these tests to actually work. It's not the end of the world to have a couple files in ctemp, but what ends up happening when you have this kind of a lack of a separation of concerns is that if you have a whole bunch of unit tests that are all reading and writing from logproj1.csv, one test is almost guaranteed to overwrite the results of another test if you run the tests all simultaneously. And you ought to be writing your unit tests so they can be run on 10 different threads at once, because that's where the world is moving, right? And so it would be so much nicer if we could do all of this in memory. And there's this wonderful presentation by Michael Feathers, who was the guy that wrote the book Legacy Code. And he does this presentation, and I've got a link to it in the references later, where he talks about code which is hard to write unit tests for is necessarily code which is poorly architected. And this is a classic example of it because in this case, we're mixing the idea of reading from the file system with what this method is trying to do, which is to get messages within a range. And so what would be so much cleaner if it was retrieving messages from somebody else, I don't care who, get me an iFile getter, and it was just calling into the iFile getter to where to get the logs, or the iLog getter, for example. And so that's what we're going to try to do here. And that iLog getter could be coming from the file system. It could be coming from a server somewhere. It could be coming from a SharePoint, who knows, or in the case of unit tests, it could be coming from an in-memory representation of logs. So that's what we're going to try to do. Okay, start to clean up this disaster by focusing on log parser, extract out its file I/O logic into a separate class so that it doesn't violate the single responsibility principle, which is part of SOLID, which is one of the core tenets of object-oriented design. So we're going to start by taking file.exists and extracting that out into a method that's control rm, and we're going to call this, how about file, I hate typing while standing. File exists. And then maybe this one right here, we should extract that out into a method control rm into get logs, something like that. And now these are into a separate method, but what we really want is we want a separate class, and we're going to call that class, at least for now, we're going to call it public class log getter, something like that. And maybe we want to take these methods into the log getter and those over there, and I suppose we could remove static because they're not going to be static anymore. And now, just to get this passed quickly, we want a, okay, so here's one more thing that ReSharper is just phenomenal about. Have you guys ever heard of reverse coding? You probably haven't because it's almost kind of unique to ReSharper, but it's a different way of coding which makes, oh, I'm glad it's not me. I was going to be like, Mom, no, I'm in a presentation right now. So we could do var, this is probably a traditional way to do this would be like var, oh, I'm lazy, so I'm going to do lr equals new log reader, log getter. Anything wrong with that? I don't know. That really rubs me the wrong way when I see code that has variable names like lr. That just really annoys me. And it's because people are lazy about typing. And I can get lazy about typing, but why not be smart and lazy at the same time? And so the way to be smart and lazy at the same time is to do new lr. I just typed the words log getter, lg, log getter, new lg, and now I can extract that into a variable, control rv, and ReSharper gave me the correct name. I did that in like 4 keystrokes. I typed less than that lazy coder would have done and ended up with nicer code. So that's extracting variable, and that's coding in reverse. And so now it's complaining because, well, I could show you or you could trust me, but it's cannot access a private method. So ReSharper has just so many little quick fixes. Like if you go on to private, you can switch that to public. So that's kind of nice, and that fixes one of these guys. But it didn't fix this one. Well, it turns out you can also fix it from the callee side as well as the caller side. So I can go over here and say make the method public, and hey, everything turned green. So we're back to green tests. We're closer than we were to having some clean code. So we have done to-do number 1. To-do number 2 is to implement the inversion of control pattern in log parser so that you could potentially separate out the implementation for the file I/O logic into an in-memory version of it, like we were talking about. So to accomplish that, we would, what do we want to do next? We want to probably take this log getter and make this a property. So we could do log getter, something like that, and go ahead. I could have done extract field. Yeah, that would have been probably even better. So now there's another one, which is to insert code. If I do Alt and insert, I can insert a constructor, which that's not really saving me that much. I could have just typed Cator, actually, and there's a ReSharper template which gives me a Cator. But this is cooler. If I do Alt insert and I insert a constructor, it says, hey, I noticed that you have a field sitting out there that hasn't been set to anything. Would you like to do that in the constructor? Oh, yes, I would. And now I have a new constructor that initializes and sets the log getter, and I did that in like 2 keystrokes. Would have normally taken quite a few. So that's very nice. And so when I'm back down here and instantiating my log parser, all my unit tests are now failing again. So what I really need is I need a log reader. I guess I need a new log reader. And no, a log reader. What did I call it? Oh, log getter. Thank you. So yeah, no log getter, and I can extract that into a variable, and I've got a log getter, and I can pass that log getter. And I'm afraid I'm over time. I keep hearing noise, but I think I'm OK on time. And so now I can extract that into a method, so I can control RM, extract that into a method, and we want to call this something like getLogParser. And on all the remaining unit tests, we just kind of want to get the log parser like that. And hopefully this turns everything green again. Yay, OK, we turned everything green again. But we still have this problem that if I were to delete these and rerun the tests, maybe I did Control UL to run all my unit tests again, you'll see that these got created again. We haven't solved the problem. Our code is a lot cleaner. We're using inversion of control. We're using dependency injection, but we are not automated. We're doing manual dependency injection. But we still haven't actually solved the fundamental problem. And so that's what the next to do is, which is to refactor these unit tests so that they never interact with the file system. Do this by subclassing the new class that you created, number 1, and injecting that into the log parser. Well, the traditional way to do that is to use an interface. We need a contract, and we need that contract to say, I don't know how I'm going to get logs, but I need to be able to get logs. I don't know whether the file exists, but I need to know whether it exists. And so to do that, you can Control-Shift-R. And if there's no other keyboard shortcuts that you memorize today, and you are going to be using ReSharper, there's 2 that you need to know. One is Control-Shift-R, which is show me all the available refactorings in the spot in code that I'm in right now. There's a slide on this later. And then there's Alt-Enter. I showed you Alt-Enter, which is the quick code fixes, but Control-Shift-R says, oh, I can move this to another file. And I recommend that in order to memorize these keyboard shortcuts, if you really want to sort of master all of the keyboard shortcuts and become a sort of a pro at ReSharper, instead of just selecting one of these now, you hit Escape, and then you read what the keyboard shortcut was, and now you go do the keyboard shortcut. So in this case, actually, none of them exist. It's not used frequently enough that they gave you one, but you can extract interface. And so when I extract the interface, I want a log getter, and I want these 2 methods to be part of my interface. And now I have an interface called iLogGetter, which gets logs and file exists. So that's kind of nice. That saved me some work right there. And in the case, did I just mess something up? No, it's OK. And now when my log parser is asking for a log getter, I don't really want the log getter. I want an iLog getter. And perhaps I want to rename my log getter, because really this is the file system log getter. And now I'm going to write a new one, which is an in-memory log getter. And to do that, I will public class, and we'll do in-memory log getter, and that inherits from iLog getter. And now it's failing because I didn't implement I have a contract and I'm not honoring it. But there's a quick fix for that, to implement missing members. So I've implemented my missing members, and it throws some new not implemented exceptions, but it works. And you'll see that as I scroll down here, all my unit tests are still green. Everything's still turned green because I'm not actually using the in-memory log getter yet. Well, an in-memory log getter probably needs 2 things. It needs a file that it's going to pretend to be, and it needs contents for that. So I could do something like private string file name and private string file contents, something like that. And by the way, ReSharper also checks that your file names match the conventions. In this case, it's complaining because this should really have been underscore file name, renamed to underscore file name. But if you have a team of developers that are all using ReSharper, you can set up your standards, and you can say, you know what, actually, I really don't want underscores. And so you can go into compiler inspection inconsistent naming, and you can change the naming rules. And you can say, actually, what I really want is all of my fields, I don't want them to be prefixed with underscore. I want them to be just as they are. And then here's the trick. There's save to. You can save to the solution team shared. And when I do that, and I go back out to cdev, C# katas, there's going to be a new, it's not ncrunch, it's dot settings here. This is it. And this is the thing that we just created, which is prefix empty. You don't really need to read that. You don't need to care about it. But just to kind of show you what's actually happening behind the scenes, if you check that into source control now, your entire team will get warnings when they do use underscores. I don't know, I like underscores. And in fact, I find that if I start a new project and I've got a bunch of different developers all coming from different directions, I say, we're all going to all hate this all together if we all just agree on the ReSharper standards. How about that? Everyone's unhappy. It kind of solves the problem. It seems to work pretty well. Except I've actually gotten used to them, and so now I become happy and everyone else becomes unhappy. But OK, well, let's switch this back to here, inconsistent naming. Change the naming. We do actually like underscores, because then variable names don't conflict. OK, in the case of file exists, the file exists if return file name, I guess we say if file name is equal to file name, then return true, else return false. Does this rub anyone else the wrong way? Yeah, that annoys me so much. It's one of those little things that ReSharper catches, and there's a lot of developers that this doesn't bother them very much, but it's one of those things that if you sort of adopt the ReSharper standards, you can get to much tidier code like that. OK, so in the case of get logs, I guess what we're trying to do is we're probably trying to return file contents.split on like new line or something like that. That's probably all we really need to do. And actually, we need a constructor. We need to generate a constructor, taking those two things, taking a file name and a file contents. And ReSharper is now saying if I alt page down to here, it can say, I'd like that to be read-only. Yeah, that's read-only because we instantiated it from the constructor, so that's good. And now we go down to our unit tests. This is getting a little bit out of hand. How about we take, at the very least, and move that into a separate file for the project log. So that's getting a little bit better. And we don't really need to see the ilog getter. We can move that into a separate file. And maybe we can keep everything else in here for now. So if I zip down to this log parser, and I don't know, does this bother you that this is like in the middle of a whole bunch of tests? It'd be kind of nicer if it was up at the beginning, wouldn't it? That was Control-Shift-Alt up. So that's kind of cool. But we don't want a file system log getter. What we want is the in-memory log getter. Notice that I just typed the capital letters there. That's another ReSharper-ism. Yes, I wanted the in-memory log getter. And in this case, I need a file name to pretend and a file contents. And so here's another one. If you just type them in, you can Alt-Enter on it and say, I'd like to create these in the containing method. So that creates the file name up there. And I can Alt-Enter here and create the contents in the containing method. Now I've got a file contents. Of course, what did it do when someone's calling that? How did it know what to put in there? It had no idea, so it put in to do. I hope I'm not moving too quickly, but I think we got 15 minutes. I think we're going to finish on time, actually. So in this case, the first thing this takes is a file to pretend to be and a file contents to pretend exists in memory. And then down here, we're kind of doing the same thing. We want to pretend that on the file system there's a logproj2.csv, and we're going to put this contents in here. And then we're going to do, how about this one? In this case, file.delete. We're actually going to test the negative case, that if a file log doesn't exist, then it returns nothing. So I think we can actually just accomplish that maybe by passing a null here and passing a null here. And, oh, everything turned green. How cool is that? Did you see it? All right. That is That's one of the things that I love about NCrunch. It just is so fast. It's just ridiculously fast. Okay, so take a breath. Hope you all have had your coffee for the day. Refactor so that the unit tests so that they never interact with the file system. Do this by subclassing. Yeah, I think we've done this actually. And so we can test this by going back to ctemp. We've got these two guys, and let's try running all of our unit tests. Control UL. That's just FizzBuzz. Why didn't all the unit tests run? Control UL. Okay, I don't know what's going on. Let's try running them all ourselves manually like this. What's that?
Just kept the previous session.
Maybe. Well, I mean, one thing we know for sure, and that is that NCrunch is running. So, I mean, we can ensure that by saying turn null, and this should all turn red. Okay. And if we get rid of that, we know all the unit tests ran. And there we go. ctemp has nothing in it. So that is tidied up. That is clean. That's some good stuff right there. By the way, there's one more thing. When I wrote these 2 years ago, there was no string interpolation in C#. I just love how the .NET folks keep adding to the language and making it better and better and better. And one of the great things about ReSharper is it keeps up with the times. So this was green when I wrote it, probably 2 years ago, but now it's complaining here in that this string.format could be replaced with string interpolation. Ding, and I don't know, I find that so much easier to read. I really like string interpolation. I know, any Ruby guys in the audience or like pretty much any other language are like, well, we've had that for forever, but yeah, we did eventually get it, right? Okay, so what have we talked about? We got extract method, we got string interpolation, we got coding in reverse, making public private, constructor templates, we talked about introducing and initializing from constructor, we extracted an interface, we implemented members, we created a parameter and a containing method, I showed you that through the unit tests, we extracted a field, I showed you inspection severity, hint, warning, and error. We talked about go back, control minus. Navigate to base. That's one we haven't gotten to yet. How about this? What happens when I am down here and get messages within range? How about this one? And when I say file exists, what happens when I hit F12 right now? I'm sorry? Yeah, what is it going to go inside of, though? The interface. Does that annoy you guys? Like, I never care about my stupid interface. In fact, it kind of annoys me that it exists at all. Frankly, in this case, I almost didn't need an interface. Sometimes I feel like people overuse interfaces, but it doesn't matter. That's not what we're getting to. I did a control minus there to get back. The thing is that if I do alt-end right now, I can go directly into the in-memory log-getter version or the file system log-getter version. That is alt-end. Oops. And similarly, if I do Alt-Home, that allows me to navigate up. So I can navigate up the inheritance hierarchy chain, or I can navigate down the inheritance hierarchy chain, and that is a really nice way for navigating through code. One or two quick more things here. I got 11 minutes remaining. I think we'll be in good shape. Let's say, how about this get log parser? No, the get log parser is not bad. How about this one? The get messages within range. Let's say that you just think it would be so much tidier if start came first and then end came and then project name came last. So you can do Control RS to change signature. And again, you don't have to memorize all of these. If I do Control Shift R, you can see that there's change signature right there, and then I can remember that it's Control RS. So Control RS. And this gives me this little dialog where I can say, I would actually like my project name to be at the end. And voila, down here in all of my unit tests, that project name appears at the end. So that's kind of nice. Change signature. We talked about insert code. Oh, last thing. Okay, and someone very correctly in the audience said one problem with this set of code is that it doesn't do exception handling. That is absolutely true. It does not. But normally you're at this point in code and you have to do try, and then you open parentheses, and then it messes up all your braces, and I don't know. It'd be so much nicer if you could just. Oops. It'd be so much nicer if you could just select this all and do something like Control EU. I don't do this as often as I need, so I actually need to look this one up. But and now it gives me all of these options of things that I can surround it with. And in this case, I think I want to surround it with a try catch. And so now try catch exception, and I can just probably throw, for example, and all my unit tests continue to stay green. So that's a really nice one. I like surround with. So that about covers it for all the keyboard shortcuts and the code part of this. So we can get back to a couple of the nice little things that you can find in ReSharper that are just kind of hidden little gems. This one is a regular expression validator. I know there's stuff like this on the web, but it's right in there, and it uses the same C# version of regular expressions. And so that's kind of nice, and it just shows you that if these are your 4 sample inputs, then these are the matches. And you get to that with the ReSharper menu and going to Tools and Validate Regular Expressions. That's kind of nice. This one is kind of nice too. This is the stack trace manager. And so if someone, let's say one of your customers sends you a stack trace, and you have to scroll through it to try and figure out. If you just paste it into the Stack Trace Explorer, it hyperlinks everything, and you can just click on it and go right to the place in code where the problem was. And so that's kind of a nice little gem right there. And the other thing is, I showed you some templates, just a couple like Cator or for tab, and you can write your own templates. So this is one that I use on the project that I'm on right now, which is doing Xamarin development. And I find myself frequently writing this class of code right here, where I want to add a label or a text box or a something, and I'm going to go and customize it because this button's going to be different from all the others. So I wrote a little template here, which is this template up here, and basically I type the word add CTRL, and then it just pops up all this code, and I type the word label here, and it changes the name of the method to label, and it creates a new label, it lowercases it, and it instantiates a new label, and then it adds that to a parent's subview, and then it returns the label. And it took me, it took me a couple minutes to set this up, and it has saved me so much time. I use it on my current project all the time. It's very specific to my project, not the kind of thing you would necessarily use everywhere, but just having this kind of capability built in is wonderful. You can save yourself so much time and energy. So that is another little hidden gem there. So if nothing else, remember this slide, Control-Shift-R. Control-Shift-R will get you all of the available refactorings for the current spot in code where your cursor is. And the other one is Alt-Enter, which will give you the quick fixes when there's static analysis issues in your code. That's really, you've seen a whole bunch of keyboard shortcuts. You don't need to memorize all those. These are really the only 2 you need.
What escape does after Control-Shift-R?
Oh yes, yeah. So this is a little tip. You don't have to do this, but if you want to start memorizing the keyboard shortcuts, instead of doing Control-Shift-R and selecting Move to another file and hitting Enter, hit Escape, back out of that particular menu, and just notice that it was Control-RO, and then do Control-RO. So, I mean, I really only touched the surface of all of the available refactorings and code smells, but it gives you a sense of what's possible. It gives you a sense of what's out there, and what this tool can get you. So there's some resources here. There's this presentation, which is available on SlideShare or something like that. This presentation was originally a blog, and that blog is over here at 24ReSharper, tinyurl.com, 24ReSharper tips, and that was actually picked up by Code Project, and it was on the homepage for Code Project for a while, and ended up getting a lot of views. It was my second most popular blog. The C# katas, if you find that useful and would like to either explore C# a little bit deeper yourself, or maybe you have some team members that you want to suggest it to, some junior developers, it's a really nice way to get up to speed on C#. If you're into Pluralsight, I watch Pluralsight religiously on the treadmill, like 20 minutes a day. It's like, I don't know, it's how I recharge. I don't know, I'm nuts, right? This is a great ReSharper course, and it'll get you up to speed on ReSharper. And this was this Michael Feathers talk that I was telling you about. Awesome, awesome. This is like my all-time favorite talk. I highly recommend it. Recommend it to everyone. And he talks about why code which is easily testable is also well architected, and why if you have code which is hard to unit test, then it is probably poorly architected. And he gives you a lot of examples why. This guy is really smart, and it's a really good talk. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. I hope you learned something, and look forward to seeing you at a future Nova Code Camp.